How's everybody doing? I'm so sorry that I have been late in delivering, you know, the water signs. But as you know, I am in the middle of production. I have a show. I have two shows, one in September and one in October. Yeah, I have a little chest congestion. I mean, I got two plays running at the same time. One is an adult play, Dignity. You guys know because you've donated money to help pay for the cast, to set design, stage manager, and what have you. And then I have an adolescent play, a youth play, because I run three theater companies: an adult, child, and adolescent. My child theater it's a fairy tale theater, and that usually opens up in the spring. This one is the youth adolescent theater, and we're going to be doing a show on the second week of October, on October 8th. We've already set a date. So I've been busy, and then I've been having signal problems, you name it. It's terrible, and then I have this congestion here because I'm like excuse me. So I'm working hard around the clock, and really could use your donations. If I get them coming, two, three, I have about 700 subscribers. $1, $2 from each of you, that's $700 right there. And that can help me so much, and then I can dedicate myself to doing more of the videos. But if I don't, then I need to take time away from doing the videos to then do other types of fundraising, and that's going to take away from you, my subscribers. So without further ado, we are going to talk about cancer, cardinal water. The cardinality of cancer, like I discussed in the female cancer, is a little different than the cardinality of a male. The cancer man seems very, very passive and very, very non-committal, but don't get it twisted. This is a cardinal sign, so there's a lot to Mr. Cancer. To understand Mr. Cancer, you have to understand the moon. And if you're the type of person that doesn't believe in the phases of the moon, doesn't believe that the moon does have influence on our planet, as many cosmologists are very accustomed to admitting, and that there is also an effect on us as human beings. Remember, we are made of 70% water. 70% water we're made of. The earth itself is 70% water. And we know and we see and we experience the influence that the moon has on the oceans, on our tides, even on the animals react to the moon. When the moon is full, did you know that that's the only time that the plants get nourishment? There be no food on the earth, and I'm talking about the plant. Remember, plants are 80% of the planet's producers. What is meant by that? What's meant by that is that 80% of the food that we get on the planet comes from plants. Animal food is only 10%, less than 10%. We cannot survive on this planet without the foods given to us by our plants and trees. Yeah, have you ever thought to stop what makes these trees and these plants, which 90% of our planet is populated by trees and plants and species of different kinds. And yet all of these give us food. You can take the leaves and make tea. Or you could take some leaves and make medicinal properties like potions and poultices and lotions. The pharmaceutical industry will not exist without the plants and trees. we may explain why they were here first before we came into consciousness. Because remember, we were already here right along with the plant and minerals and animal, but just evolving at a different evolutionary state. And I talk a lot about that in my Medium. If you read my Medium, www.medium.com, Fernando, I read a lot of series about that. You can't do everything in 25 minutes in a video. So I do have, and then I have my website, thepeoplesastrologer.com. You should check it out. It's a lot of information. And of course, my theater blog as well. So I have a lot going on. A lot going on. And it all connects. Now, why am I spending 5 minutes going 9 to 6 minutes talking about plants and trees and the moon? Well, as above, so below. If you understand, excuse me, how intimately connected we are to the moon, you'd gag. The moon has many phases, and if the moon pulls the tides of the ocean, and the ocean is, and the earth is 70% water, can you imagine our fluids, our bodily fluids, 70% water? That's going to affect the moon. I mean, that's going to affect us. The effects, the vibratory effects, the electromagnetic effects of the moon. Understand that this has also a spiritual and a psychological counterpart. Understand that the hormones of the bodies are regulated by the pituitary gland and the thyroid, right? But the word hormone, which is Greek, means hormona, it means to urge. These are impulses that come into the body, regulated by these organs, the pituitary gland, the thyroid, and the hypothalamus, and the thymus gland. But it is the moon that regulates these forces in our bodies. That's why people get mood swings. Well, when there's a full moon, people, especially women, tend to swell up. Right? When there's a full moon, women swell. Some men do too. So that right there lets you know that there is a physical impact that the moon has on us. And also an emotional impact. If you feel bloated and if you feel just sluggish, that's going to change your mood. That's going to change your emotions. That's going to change how you react to things in the outside. Okay? The moon, if you look at it and you don't blink and you just watch the moon, you can see her move slightly. Move, move, move. And by the time half the day gets here, from 8 in the morning to noon, the moon will be from here to here. You will not notice it unless you are looking at that moon from 8 in the morning to 12 noon to see it actually move across the sky. And as it's doing that, it's changing phases, because remember, it's reflecting the light of the sun. So there are times where the moon is visible in daylight. That means that the sun and the moon are conjunct each other. Not too close, because then it disappears with the brightness of the sun. And it also depends on the inclination and declination of the moon in relative to the earth. So therefore, the moon gives certain phases. That's what we call the lunar phases. And we have the first, second, third, and fourth quarter. The full moon, the new moon, and the quarters in between. There are also 8 major phases to the moon. So now we have 4 major moon phases, 8 sub-phases. So 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's 12 phases. But we're not done. Then we have 28 tinctures. The moon, when it's a full moon and it's white, like my lamp over here, like a full moon, right? Then, by the time it reaches a new moon, which is completely, black, right? It takes 28 tinctures before it goes from full to a new moon, which is black. And then back to a full moon. Again, another 28 tinctures. And you can notice it. If you really are a good observer, you can go online on the internet and you can write down 28 moon phases, and it'll break it down to you. And they're so subtle, you can barely recognize it, you can barely see it. But they are relatively moon tinctures, like, the crescent moon, and it's getting bigger and bigger and smaller, depending if it's going on a full moon or a new moon. These are called tinctures. So on top of the 12 major phases, you have 28 minor phases. Now add 28 to the 12. You have 38, 40, 48 phases. 48 phases. 48 phases. God, excuse me. Yeah, I've been a little under the weather, but I got march on. There's a lot going on. 48 phases. Why am I spending already 11 minutes on this? Listen, you have to understand that we are all influenced by the planet. Now, if you don't want to go too far and believe that the planets don't have life in them, and they do. There are beings that live on all these planets. You can see them. You can hear them. You can smell them. You can sense them. But they are part of our life wave. And for the reason that Jehovah decided that we are not to see them, and they are not to truly influence us because we belong to a different life wave than they do, they nevertheless still have an influence on our way of life down here on Earth. And this is true of all planetary solar systems. We're not the only planet or solar system with multiple life forms. We're just too earthly bound to see, and we cannot see into other dimensions, like a cat can or like a dog can. But these influences are real. So too are these influences real in the psyche of a human being. And the planet, the satellite, the moon, is the closest satellite, the closest celestial body to us relative to all the other planets and our solar system. So it will assert a particular force. Understand, going back to the plants and trees, you heard of photosynthesis, right? We learned in school that photosynthesis, that the plants need sunlight because they turn that sunlight into simple sugars, right? The food for the plants to be able to live and breathe. That's how they breathe, but that's not how they live. Plants also produce children. Just like I can have sex with a woman and we'll produce a baby. Well, when a plant takes the sunlight, light, and brings it down into its roots, the only way it can turn that energy of the sun into food, like potatoes, right? Yams, plantains that grow outside the earth, right? Rice inside the earth, right? All kinds of root vegetables. That's why they call them root vegetables, because they grow under the earth. And then you got fruit that grow outside of the earth, in the leaves or in the tree, like the palm trees have the coconuts, or you get apples and oranges or bananas, corn. None of these foods will exist without the phases of the moon. Yes, the plants take light from the sun, but it doesn't end there. Then you have what's called dark reaction. We learned this in high school. So that's why I'm giving you a little brief explanation about it. There's something called dark reaction. Dark reaction and interval of phases. And when the moon is full, that's when that energy of the sun begins to work towards the roots to create the foods that we so much love to eat today. Without that moon, we will not have food. The plants will not produce food. So here you got the father, which is the sun, and the moon, the mother. So then the babies is the fruits and vegetables that come out of the earth. Sun and moon, marriage, man and woman, mother and father get together, offspring is the foods that we eat. Even coffee grows in the earth. So thank you, Mother Moon, for this wonderful mountain grain Colombian coffee. I will shake the hands of Mr. Valdez myself. Delicious. Delicious. So we won't have anything to eat. We will have to, our diet will be 90% meat because the plants will not be producing the foods and fruits and vegetables that we so desperately need to survive without that moon and all of its phases. So understand how important the moon is. And that's what makes it cardinal. That's what makes it cardinal. And it just so happened that this moon rules an entire race of human beings. Those born between the portals of June 22nd through July 23rd, which we attribute to the astrological constellation of Cancer. So now, having said that, we're going to jump right in and we're going to talk about how to understand the Cancer man. The Cancer man is very taciturn. He moves about his community and gets to know every neighborhood, every corner, every crevice, hole, dark alley, as well as the good fancy places. He will visit these places not once, but multiple times to see if they change. Just like the phases of the moon change, see? Because we're going to curve like this, right? If the people change, if the animals and insects change, to see if human nature is consistent, or if it also changes. He's looking to see if things are changing around him, if things fluctuate, if things are consistent in people, in nature, even in himself. He's constantly searching to see what stays constant and what changes. We know that the moon constantly changes. If there's any consistency to the moon, is that it's always changing. It's always going through phases. That's why I had to take almost 20 minutes to explain this. Because once I do, you will understand the same psychology that we can apply to Mr. Cancer is attributed to the actual movement, cosmologically speaking, of our moon. If the moon is unpredictable, so is the Cancer man. If the moon is consistent in her phases, so is the Cancer man consistent in his commitment, whatever they may be. If we have a full moon, then that means that we see a bright light in the sky, and it's beautiful, but it can also be terrifying. So the Cancer man will also have his days where he's just wonderful to be with, to be around with, and just a beautiful expression of femininity inside of a man. There's nothing more beautiful or even more handsome of a man when both feminine and masculine forces are balanced. It makes men incredibly attractive and good looking because the feminine and the masculine is integrated. This is the symbolic gesture of our full moon. Now, when we're dealing with a new moon where it's completely black and you really can't see a new moon, it's black. It camouflages right into the blackness of space. And that's the dark nature of the moon. So too, that Mr. Cancer man has a dark nature to him. And he can be moody and crabby and all these things that are attributed to cancers, both men and women, are being moody and unpredictable, and just you just don't want to be around them when they get in these phases, right? So understand that the Cancer man is extremely complex. He engages in extremely complex, difficult to figure him out, difficult to understand motions of behaviors. And they are all emotionally driven from within. and he knows this. He knows it. He just does not give a shit about explaining it to you. Because most of the time he's trying to figure it out himself. So understand that the Cancer man, one thing you need to know, ladies, and a few gents, is that the Cancer man is never satisfied standing still. Scorpio man, yeah. He'll be here standing still until the earth reinvents itself again around the pond in which the scorpion lives. Fixed water. And murky waters run deep. Not so with the Cancer man. The Cancer man has to be on the move, physically and psychologically. And physically only within a certain sphere of influence that he can influence. Basically the home. From his mother's house to his wife's house. Or from his mother's house to the girlfriend's house. Or from the mother's house to the fiance's house. He'll never break the tie. Even when there's a marriage commitment, he'll never break the tie. That's how provincial he is. So understand that he is seeking to see and validate through his seeking and his evaluations what is constant and what is consistent and what it is not. And this is the essence of cardinality, because he just doesn't want to know it for its own sake. He's planning things. He's planning things. He's figuring things out. He's feeling his way through things. This is why. Because he's about to do something. Remember, the opposite sign is Capricorn, the devil. And understand that as the devil, the subconscious of Cancer, he's out to ultimately conquer his environment and also people and those around him. And he does this in very small steps. Small steps. Like the oceans that break the tides, like the tides that crash into the banks of a port, right? And you see all that white fluff. They call it moon sperm, right? It just crushes against the rocks and it's beautiful, right? And it's white. You know, but if that continues on and on and on and on, guess what? Those ports or those banks will start to erode. It will start to break. The Grand Canyon was carved through water, rain, water, and also rivers. Because remember, the Grand Canyon used to be underwater, and it didn't look like that. And then when the lands came up through tectonic movements and you have waters moving in streams, just talk to a geologist, he'll tell you. That is what carved the Grand Canyon. So understand the force of cardinal water. Waters will move boulders. We can't move boulders, but the water can. So understand. And the Grand Canyon was created thousands of years in the making by water slowly breaking it down and molding the Grand Canyon to what it looks like today. That is the way the cancer man operates. He moves slowly and he's diabolically patient. And we ran out of time.